Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. And first of all, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today, webinar is presented by Senha Segura, and the topic of today's session is surprising secrets of cyber resilience. And before I introduce our speaker, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First of all attendees are participating in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded and we'll be able to share a link with you after the event is complete. And we welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. And now I'd like to bring our speaker of the session, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Steve Hunt to our Senha Segura webinar. Our speaker today has been entrenched in the world of the highest achievers in business for over 3 decades. He has coached executives at British Petroleum, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, the White House, Cisco, and IBM, and has assisted more than 400 global organizations in optimizing success in operations and leadership. Steve has appeared on Fox News, CNN, and other news programs. His analysis has appeared in the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Forbes, and other global publications. He was inducted into the cybersecurity industry I, ISSA Hall of Fame, founded Communities of Excellence, and CSO magazine presented him with the Industry Visionary Compass Award. Steve attended Elizabethtown College and was a graduate fellow at the University of Chicago. Steve's diverse background lends a fresh perspective on business and also society. Now, with all of this, and at this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Steve, who is going to start today's presentation. Hey, Steve, it's all yours right now.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I look forward to this presentation. You know, I got the idea for this presentation after a jujitsu class. I was in this class and I was learning some of the moves of jujitsu. I was a few classes into my training and thought I had it all figured out. I went in there and we rotated partners, and my partner was this little girl. She was kind of round and short legs, and I thought, okay, this is going to be no problem. And I got her just in the position I wanted her, and I was about to like get her to tap out, and all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. Her leg just kind of spun around. I was on the floor. She was on top of me and pinning my arm with my face mushed into the sweaty mat on the floor. And that's when it dawned on me that jujitsu is a lot like cyber resilience. And I'll tell you why. Before I do, though, I need to confess something, because I can admit it now, but for most of my career, I was a patsy. I had achieved proficiency in Unix and Linux operating systems. I had rode the wave of IT security from its earliest days. I headed a think tank at Cambridge. I advised the White House, and yet, and even with all the leading positions in the industry, I was still blind to the truth. Fragmented, improvisational, shoot from the hip security is the norm in most IT organizations. Security managers and their departments perform tasks with little or no guidance other than this all-consuming desire to prepare for and defeat the next technical security threat, malware, hacker. It's like working in a fire department, running from one alarm to the next. However, the best run companies, they run security like a business unit. They're the ones that achieve the greatest benefits for the organization and reduce costs relative to performance. They're the ones that weather storm after storm with negligible loss. They are resilient. By the time we finish this webinar today, 4 more CISOs will lose their jobs. Of the 3,100 named heads of security in Fortune 5,000 companies, the average tenure of the CISO is 17 to 24 months. 66% of all heads of security leave their jobs disappointed. How many of you are over 50 or want to be working when you're over 50? Did you know that at least 56% of you will get fired or forced out at least once before you retire? And with a long, unexpected period of being out of work. 75% of all security leaders believe that their security budgets are inadequate, and more than half of CISOs blame internal politics and executive management for inhibiting their success. What's behind this crisis in leadership? And why do the most resilient organizations have CISOs, directors, senior managers staying in their positions, getting promoted happily, getting pay raises happily for 6 years or more, much more? What sets apart the most resilient from the masses? This mystery has consumed me for decades. Over a long career as a strategic advisor, I've been invited to some of the top performing, most resilient organizations in the world to study their success and replicate their resilience. They come in all shapes and sizes, highly regulated, completely not. I found these resilient companies in a healthcare group in South Bend, Indiana, in a major oil company in Houston, Texas, in a defense contractor in Northern Virginia, a bank in Paris, and a little airport in Southeast Asia, a hedge fund in Connecticut, a small marketing firm in Lombard, Illinois. But how do they do it? What exactly is the secret sauce that separates the best run companies from the rest? How many companies hired security professionals thinking that if they could just identify and bottle the success of the most resilient organizations, then we could all apply the same architectures and technologies and policies in place of the reactive firefighting approach used by poorly managed organizations. After making many attempts to codify the recipe of security success, and after many failures to do so, my colleagues and I stumbled onto an insight that removed the veil, revealing the truth I had sought all along. It wasn't made clear to me for many years, and only now can I share with you the surprising secrets of the most cyber resilient organizations. But first, you need to understand why I couldn't see it. Like, it was right in front of me, right in front of you, and you're not using it to your advantage. My own enlightenment followed a bumpy journey. I mean, I believed that security, I knew that, like, outside of this room, outside of this webinar, everyone else in the world thought security was an annoying layer of cost and inconvenience. You would go up to an executive and say, you need more security. And what they just heard you say is, you need more annoying layers of cost and inconvenience. Over the years, struggling to get respect in the security industry, we finally, around 2000, 2001, when the dot-com bubble finally burst, we stumbled onto a slightly better way of talking about security, and that was security as insurance policy. That is, pay this much money now to hopefully avoid paying this much money later. This cost analysis, also called risk management, wasn't very sexy. It's not very attractive. It's not what keeps CEOs up at night. I learned from the most resilient organizations that there is a third way of thinking about security. There's a way of thinking about security that is like brakes on a car. The resilient organizations describe security this way, like, why do we have brakes on a car? We're driving along and we have brakes on a car so we can stop, right? But if our intention were to stop, we would just not go anywhere in the first place. No, we have brakes on our car so that we can drive fast, so that we have the confidence to zig and zag through traffic and avoid potholes and debris and state troopers on the road, so that we can get to our destination as quickly as we want to. This kind of agility maps to the agility that CEOs want from their business. And when we talk about security as an enabler, like brakes on a car, helping the company to respond with agility toward its goals, toward its objectives, that message works. We get to create resilient security with that kind of thinking. Now, in my quest to focus on the value of security, I went so far as to promote that we all purge the word security from our vocabulary. I'd say that if, when proposing a security investment, you could not convincingly argue how this security initiative would help the company to keep trucks on the road, affecting the top line of the balance sheet and not just the bottom line, then you shouldn't make the investment. Now, what do I mean by the top line of the balance sheet? Some of you know. That's the line of the balance sheet. That's the part of the balance sheet that almost everybody in the organization worries about, thinks about. The bottom line is, there are a few people who focus on the bottom line. That's the head of legal counsel, the chief financial officer, and the head of security. Those folks are about keeping bad things from happening, keeping the cost of doing business to a minimum. That's the bottom line. However, everyone else in the organization, the CEO included, is focused on the top line of the balance sheet, which is creating revenue, opening up new markets, improving customer satisfaction, making new business possible. So let's talk about security in that way. That's how the most resilient organizations do it. Let's try it. Take a technology that you're all familiar with, privileged access management. What does it do? It's about it's about allowing every type of access that's necessary and inhibiting those types of access that are not. And a lot of attacks these days, most of the ones that make the headlines, have to do with people who are not authorized achieving higher levels of privilege in an organization than moving laterally, causing damage. So if we were to describe that in terms of the top line of the balance sheet, how would we do it? How would we do it? Think about that for just a second. How would you do it? What would you say? Now, some of you are thinking, well, it keeps bad things from happening. But remember, as soon as you say that, you're focused on the bottom line. This is what most security people do. But the most resilient take this kind of crafty innovative approach and talk about it from the top line. So what would be a top line argument for why privileged access management is essential? Well, one could be that, for example, by installing privileged access management, you will comply with NIST standard 800.1-171. And when doing so, you can open up new markets to sell to government agencies and government contractors. And that could create millions of new revenue for the company. Another way of looking at it is that by installing privileged access management, you're creating a safe environment for partnerships and mergers and acquisitions. Both answers create a compelling argument for installing PAM into the mind of the CEO and everyone else who thinks in terms of the top line of the balance sheet. So you see, we can easily paint a realistic scenario that the company can do positive things with this solution that it couldn't have done without. This, I'm telling you, the secure the business message really works. It's just like jujitsu. It's like an arm pin. It just makes things happen. Everywhere I coached this change, everywhere that CISOs and IT leaders just like you used this message, you were all more successful at gaining budget dollars. Everywhere I shared this message, employees were more engaged. Everywhere you applied these ideas, you saw improvements. But not huge and not consistent. Something was still missing. Companies with good people following good processes and properly using good technology still suffered punishing breaches. And meanwhile, the best run organizations took a licking and kept on ticking. When I discovered this next bit, this next secret, I was so relieved. It made so much sense. And I didn't really beat myself up for not seeing it before, because in our industry, no one had talked about it. It wasn't on my radar at all. Who here has ever read a management book? Think of a management book you've read. Think about that. Maybe it's Built to Last or Search for Excellence. I always loved the business classic, Good to Great, the amplification of value. Therefore, for years, I thought, let's get better people on the bus. Let's use procedures, following international frameworks. Some of them have names you recognize, like ISO and ITIL and COBIT and the NIST cybersecurity framework, NIST CSF. All of these, in my mind, were approaching security with the idea that we can only create value if we have the right people following the right processes. Now, I was at NIST one time talking with the authors of the NIST cybersecurity framework, and I noticed that from their office, way down at the other end of the hall, way down, there was another office, also working on frameworks to create value, but from a different point of view. It was called the Baldrige Performance Excellence Framework. Now, NIST, I don't know if you realize, was started by George Washington. It's one of the first acts he did as president, as first president of the United States. He created the Bureau of Weights and Measures, this bureau to standardize processes and technologies throughout the young country. Today, it's known as NIST, and it's part of the US Department of Commerce. And therefore, having a group that focuses on creating performance excellence, which is another way of saying continuous improvement, was essential for the country to move forward. This continuous improvement idea is one of the elements that is always found in the most resilient organizations. Resilience, it turns out, means always finding a path forward no matter what happens. Always finding a path forward no matter what happens. The opposite of that is doing tasks, putting out fires. Those are the number one signals that an organization is not resilient. Unclear strategy, unclear values leads to unclear and conflicting priorities. When tasks, when putting out fires is the point, you lose heart. You lose the will of your team. You lose the game. What's responsible is working strategically toward resilience, a vision of resilience. What's irresponsible is working to secure assets and to solve problems. I heard a quote from Professor Kessler at Knox College in Illinois. He said, you might want to write this down. He said, "We live in a machine. We live in a machine that is designed to get us to neglect what is important about life. We live in a machine that is designed to get us to neglect what is important about life." IT security is just like that. It's built exactly like that. It's designed at its core to be reactive, to get us to focus on minutia. And that's exactly how every IT security training program trains people. And it's how we reward our teams, minutia focus. We have intrinsically sidestepped the jujitsu leadership of strategic thinking and teamwork along with the rest of the organization. CISOs, they tell me that creating teamwork is hard. Coaching, one CISO at a big company out east just told me last week, coaching every employee to step up their game, continuously improve, takes time and patience I just don't have. This is the cost of the firefighting mentality that many of you recognize. Resilient organizations, on the other hand, instill a culture of embracing feedback. We can all grow together when we're hungry for feedback, when we're open to change, when we're open to learning from our mistakes, learning from the perceptions and knowledge of others. Ray Dalio, the billionaire philanthropist and hedge fund guru, he says that more than anything else, this willingness of some people to look at themselves and others objectively is what differentiates people who live up to their potential from those who don't. Every one of the most resilient organizations used some sort of performance excellence framework alongside a cybersecurity framework. And they got powerful results in teamwork, in people lifting each other up and working toward a shared vision. Yet, not every company that uses performance excellence is super resilient. So it doesn't stand alone. In other words, there's still some other ingredient like you need to sprinkle on to catalyze, to activate this lasting excellence. And by working with this in mind and taking jujitsu classes, you and I can discover together this holy grail, this third surprising secret of cyber resilience. And I can say with complete confidence that you'll recognize it as soon as I say it. You'll know intuitively that your organization already has it. It's just being used vastly beneath its potential. The missing piece is you. It's you. Now let me explain. How many of you ever came across a security program, ever heard of a security program that needed more budget dollars? Yeah? A strangled budget makes it very hard to do security well, to keep up with new threats, to build a resilient organization. Wouldn't it be better to have a steady flow of funding for security projects? How many of you ever wished for more headcount? Trying to do so much with so few people and so little time. Wouldn't it be better to design a project that needs the right people with the right skills and then have those people just show up ready for action? How many of you wish people would just get it? Just do what you recommend, because after all, they pay you to know your stuff, so they should listen. Wouldn't it be better that senior management would proactively invite you to strategic meetings, ask for your advice, follow it, and then ask how they can help you to be more successful? Executives and end users would want to follow your guidance so that they can serve their customers better. Your peers at the most resilient organizations have figured it out. They've supercharged their careers and their wallets, by the way. And now you can too, with jujitsu leadership. If you've ever watched martial arts, mixed martial arts, you've learned that those fighters using jujitsu do not have to overpower their opponents. They do not have to be faster or stronger. Think about this from a cybersecurity point of view. They need only to deflect opposition, to take the strength out of their attacks. Jiu-jitsu fighters are scrappy, inventive, and above all, resilient. Resilience, remember, is always finding a path forward, no matter what happens. Always finding a path forward, no matter what happens. That's what you see in the best jiu-jitsu fighters, and that's what you see in the best cybersecurity leaders. To create resilience, you get to learn leadership jiu-jitsu within yourself. Leadership jiu-jitsu is something you can learn. You can start practicing it today. I'm going to show you how. You can take it home and use it at home. So try this. Did you ever want to read somebody's mind? What does reading someone's mind mean? It means there's something in their mind. It's stuck in there. It's not coming out. You don't know what it is. And you want to get it out of their mind and into yours. Right? You want to do that? Chris Voss wrote a beautiful book called Never Split the Difference. It's about negotiation, but inside of it, he talks about tactical empathy. Some of you have heard about that, right? Tactical empathy. He uses an expression, it seems like you are frustrated with my budget proposal. It seems like, it looks like, it sounds like is always the beginning of the statement. Plus an emotion word, plus context. It seems like you are frustrated with my budget proposal. It looks like you are disappointed with the results of the audit. It sounds like you are angry at your coworker. Write that formula down. It looks like, sounds like, seems like, plus emotion, plus context. Always in that formula. And then wait. And I mean wait, just like zip it. Don't say another word. Their response will reveal what's been hiding inside. When you ask a question, when you make a statement like that, it seems like you are angry at your coworker. You're causing them to take this soupy emotion from their amygdala and slurp it up through their limbic system into the prefrontal cortex to turn it into words and context and make sense out of it and sentences, and to decide whether that's what they were feeling back there. And they'll say something like, frustrated? No. Discouraged. Without that budget being approved, I really don't think I'm going to be effective. And that means I'm going to have a terrible performance review in a couple of months. That's what comes out when you ask a question like that. That's mind reading at its best, and it's part of jujitsu leadership. Stephen Covey, in his book, a book I'm sure you all have on your bookshelves, some of you haven't opened it in a few years. It's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says we should follow the most important principle in executive communications, and that's to seek first to understand, and then seek to be understood. Seek first to understand, then seek to be understood. You know, we can't do what so many IT professionals, so many of you on the call, do every day, which is we know what we're talking about. We know what we're doing. We're trained. We see the solution. And so we tell it at people. We speak it at people. We steamroll and railroad and bulldoze our point until other people either comply or they give up, and you can just call them idiots. Now, you know people who speak like that, who just talk at people and just have this arrogant attitude like, well, I figured it out, and if you don't understand it, then you're an idiot. Well, that doesn't happen so much in the most resilient organizations. There, individuals on teams and across departments speak and converse with one another. They seek first to understand. That opens the door in the other person, allowing real communication in, instead of shields up. Shields up, we get to speak in a way that gets other people to lower their shields so that they can hear our point. This improves our persuasiveness. It improves teamwork and morale. Because, you know, you can't really motivate or persuade another person just by telling them the right thing to do. That doesn't work. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but I guarantee it hasn't worked. An IT manager, a CEO, a customer, even a spouse, they don't do anything that you want simply because you want them to do it. They do what they do because they want to, for their own reasons, their own motivation. So they'll never do it because of your management talents or your technical excellent acumen. So, and please tell this to all the techies on your team. Technological aptitude, write this down. Technological aptitude counts for nothing when securing the budget. Instead, figure out their motivation and how to satisfy it. Do this and you're in. You'll be speaking with them as an insider. Nothing's more powerful. Nothing creates resilience faster. Nothing transforms your career faster than this form of what I call adaptive communication, communication on steroids. It's the way Martin Luther King launched a movement. It's the way the great CISOs create resilient companies and stay resilient year after year. And it's the way that you will get your next raise, your next big promotion, your best year at work. I can give you an example of how this works. At a company I worked with some time ago, there was a guy named Frank. You might recognize him because I think there's a Frank like this guy in every company. He's the guy with that reputation of being difficult to work with. Maybe some of you on this call are Frank. He's usually one that's got, this scowl on his face, this resting scowl face. When you greet him in the hallway, he just grunts. You know this guy, right? He's talented in his area. He's very good at what he does. And this guy, Frank, he was very good at what he did. Yet he seems to resist any new idea. And when he speaks, which is rare, he'll say things like, "That's a train wreck waiting to happen," or "I want no part of it," or "There's no way that's going to work." His words are your clues. He doesn't like to work outside of his comfort zone, and he does not want to fail. All his words, all his actions, his grumpiness, his isolation are his ways of protecting himself from going down with the ship. So Janet at this company, she was the project lead, and she had learned the secrets of adaptive communications and jujitsu leadership. And when she approached him where he was. She said, "Frank, I'm inviting you to be a part of this project, but be clear, it's my project. My neck is the only one on the line. Frank, you're really good at what you do. You have exactly what we need to make this a success. I'm only asking you to do your magic, and we'll take care of the rest. If I go down in flames, I go down alone. But it would be a real shame for you to miss out on helping if this thing is a success." Boom! He just said, okay. And Janet had her dream team intact. That's what jujitsu leadership is in action. This is what it's like in the most resilient organizations. It's people just like you. You looking at this image right now. It's people like you who receive the unlimited budgets. It's people like you who get the headcount and the support to build the most resilient architectures and company cultures. By one, having an orientation on value, like choosing privileged access management solutions that deflect aggressors and take the power out of attacks. You'll get funding for greater resilience. Number two, by enlisting your team to create an engaged workforce, supportive management, and measurable continuous improvement, resulting in natural resilience. And three, by adaptive communication, listening, caring, and speaking very clearly in a way that others can feel like they're part of it, building resilience into individuals around you. If you don't learn these skills, the skills of leadership jujitsu, the skills of resilient organizations, which apply whether we work in the cubicle or the C-suite, We'll reach a breaking point in our career. We'll plateau. We'll be one of those technology professionals who gets forced out, and we'll find it increasingly harder to find our next jobs. Look, I want all of you to become better versions of yourselves. I want you to make money. I want you to have more fun in your careers. But you know what? So does the CEO of your organization. So do your customers. Because when you learn these skills to advance your goals and advance your ideas and make that money, you'll be doing your part to create a more resilient organization, a more resilient economy, and a better future for us all. Take control over your career. Don't be accidental. Don't be a victim of your resume with your past determining what your future will look like. Don't squeeze your butt into an inner tube and float down the lazy river of your career, just letting your career and your life happen to you. But the biggest problem is, if you don't get this handled, if you continue the way you are, if I talk to you in a year and you're still going to be in the exact same position you are now, feeling exactly the same way you do now, but you're going to be a year older and you're still working just as hard on those projects and to get your team motivated and to get management support and all the plans you have for your life to spend time with your family will go by the wayside for another year. And probably you'll change jobs because you lack the skills to promote your vision and increase your influence where you work today. But it doesn't have to be that way. What if there were a way to supercharge your career right now, to get moving on a path that really fulfills you so that you make more money and get bigger budgets and create resilience in your architecture? You get up and go to work at a job you love where you feel respected and valued, and that's the norm for you. Being heard at an executive level, earning enthusiastic support is what you need to sell your products, to sell your ideas. And it's now something you do easily and totally understand, and you're totally on top of it. And it's not a problem anymore. How many of you might be interested in that? I want to thank Senga Segura for their vision. They understand that selecting technology correctly is a critical part of resilience, of resilient jujitsu leadership. I've prepared a short training video that will start you. It'll be the first steps on your path to mastering adaptive communication. It's free for you. Just contact me through this LinkedIn QR code or through my website. And remember, my goodness, it's not our job to secure the network. It's not our job to secure the building. It's our job to secure the business and to create resilience in every corner of our lives. Thank you very much. Okay, David, back to you.
Wow. Wow. That was an excellent session. Thank you very much, Steve. I'd like to also thank everyone who joined us for today's webinar. And if you have any comments or questions or would like to connect with the Senha Segura team, you can either reach out directly through our website, www.senhasegura.com, or you can also reach out via Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Steve, thank you again for sharing your precious insight and expertise. And thank you, everyone, for your time. And have everyone a wonderful rest of the day and the week. Thank you and goodbye.